when they took my kids from my father, they said that none of my family members could be around my kids. They gave my kids to my brother, and then I went to go to rehab so I can get better for them. And while I was in rehab is when they stripped me of my they moved my children out of the house that I had them out with my brother, and they moved them to their dad and separated my children.
Our call board, and let's take our first call for the evening. I think it's Susan from Arizona. Susan, did you have a story to tell or a question to ask?
I did. Finally did. I'm on the radio right now. My kids?
Susan,
what they did to me?
Susan, did you have a story to tell or a question to ask?
Huh?
Did you have a story to tell or a question to ask?
Yes, I do. I have a story to tell.
Go ahead.
Okay. So mine started back in 2015, but I'll just go with the most recent. Just recently, I had got my kids taken away because I got in trouble for some drug charges, and I had signed temporary guardianship over to my father, so that way I knew that I was in trouble, so I made sure I signed away so I wouldn't lose my kids. Mm-hmm. I had never been caught with actual drugs mm-hmm. or anything like that, but I got multiple charges for it.
Okay.
And without having anything like that, they took me to court. When they took my kids from my father, they said that none of my family members could be around my kids. They gave my kids to my brother, and then I went to go to rehab so I can get better for them. And while I was in rehab is when they stripped me of my they moved my children out of the house that I had them out with my brother, and they moved them to their dad and separated my children. I told this, and I left rehab because I was against it. They didn't tell me about it. No one told me anything. Mm-hmm. The welfare lady never complied with me at all, ever. She wouldn't answer my calls. Guardian Lighten wouldn't answer my calls. So I left rehab, and I told them that I was not okay with that, and I tried to fight that, and they said there's nothing I can say about it. I don't have the kids. So then they wouldn't let me be part of the kids' schooling or nothing like that. So then I tried to go to rehab again, so that way I can try it again, so that way I can get clean and be there for my kids.
Sure.
And they wouldn't leave. I'm sorry?
I said, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I went to rehab the second time, and when I went the second time is when they were taking my custody away from me. So I left rehab the second time to come back and try to fight that, and they said, well, there's really nothing I can do. No one ever explained anything to me. I don't know what adjudication is. I never had a trial. I never had any of this. They were just telling me what was going to happen, and that was how it's going to go. And the more I argued and fought, the more that they were against me, saying I'm a bad mom. And so then I started letting my pastors come up dirty. I let my pastors come up dirty, and I told them, I go, and then when I let my pastors come up dirty, I go, you guys are saying that I'm not a fit mom being around my children while under the influence. I was like, but yet here I am. You guys ever see me with my visits while I'm under the influence of my children? I go, I'm a different, I have ADD, and I have a doctor to sign off on it. And they were trying to get me on Adderall to help me with my addiction. And everybody ignored that completely. Nobody wanted to help me. The welfare lady never wanted to help me get a place. They didn't want to help me. They didn't want me to help do nothing. So then I got a job at a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and they still wouldn't give my kids back. And instead, they gave them to their dad. The dad and his wife are on probation for a pound of methamphetamine, fentanyl pills, ounce of weed. That's what his charges are. And then the other dad is on probation for beating up a woman, strangling her, and causing serious injuries to her neck. And they took the kids from me and gave them to the dads and said there is nothing I can do, that they were never going to give me my kids back at all, period. I've never been to prison. I've never been caught with drugs. I'm not on probation. I'm done with everything like that, and they still wouldn't help me. There was nothing I could do. So when they said I had to either sign my rights away to my children, or they were going to take my children and my future kids too. So I was back in the corner, and I felt like I couldn't fight back. And I did exactly what they wanted me to do, which I know I probably messed up big time. So I went to court. I went in there. I told the judge. I told my attorney was not present. I never saw the paperwork to relinquish my rights up until that day in court. I told the judge. I told everybody. I was like, look, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I'm under the influence of these methamphetamine, weed, and alcohol. I don't want to give my kids up, but you guys said I have to, and I don't want to. I was like, so you're forcing my hand. And I was like, and I don't want to do this. And I go, That's the only reason why I go, I'm like this right now, because I don't want to do it. And even though I was under the influence, they still had me sign my rights over, had my baby dad be the witness to it. And that's why I lost my kids. And it goes deeper than that, too.
What state are you in?
I was parked on the side of the... Huh? I'm in Nebraska.
Okay. So I'm licensed in California, but if you were in California and you're under the influence and you're in court and you've told the court that you're under the influence, that might be... I
have the paperwork, too, that says I told them.
That might be a basis to go back to court to set that aside. And in California, if the children were placed with your with their fathers, I don't think a court would ask you. And
they separated my kids.
I don't think that they would ask you to relinquish your parental rights, because if that's what they've asked you to do, theoretically your children don't have a mother now. I mean, it's not you don't.
Yeah, they adopted my kids out to my ex-husband's wife.
For both of the fathers?
On one of the fathers.
Okay.
They adopted three of my kids out to his wife, and then my son that does not belong to him at all, period. Mm-hmm. They gave him to my ex-husband and his wife. And like I said, both of those two have been to prison twice and on probation for a pound of meth, and I've not had anything. And they said I was not fit enough to. I'm not even allowed to be around my kids alone. But now I can't have them at all, period. And they're going to change my kids' names and stuff.
Well, Susan, the problem is that when the court looks at who the better parent is, they look at what's happening now, presently. You know, when you went to court,
right?
If these two gentlemen were fit, other than they had a criminal background and there was nothing else going on with them, you know, most judges would say you came to court under the influence. They're probably going to say, well, I'm going to give the kids to the father. Right, that's not a good strategy, going to court telling the judge you're under the influence of meth.
That's why I did that, to maybe buy me a loophole or something.
No, that probably worked completely against you.
Oh.
Right?
I know. I think part of the way through I gave up because no one was helping me.
Right. Now,
and I already know that it's my fault.
And here's another thing. You said your attorney wasn't there. That might be another basis if you were in California. To have that overturned because, you know, you did something without your attorney's advice and your attorney wasn't even present to represent you.
My attorney said he wasn't going to help me. I paid him $4,000 to tell me that he wasn't going to defend me at all. Mm-hmm. That he wasn't going to help me. And I go, you can get in trouble for misrepresentation. And he told me he was going to withdraw from my case. So instead of him withdrawing from my case, I just shut my mouth and let him do what he wanted. He never met with me once.
Right. Well, you're in Nebraska right now. What I would do is I would try to find some attorney in my area through a bar association in my area, or Google knows all. Try to find someone and go for a consultation to see if you can have that relinquishment set aside, because number one, you were under the influence and you told the judge you were under the influence. So therefore, theoretically, you're not competent to give away your parental rights. And number two, your attorney wasn't there to help you and to advise you. And in California, that would be a big problem if your attorney wasn't there. You know, in most cases in California, if your attorney was of record and he or she wasn't present, they wouldn't even do the case. They would continue it.
And then when I was done with it all, when I was all said and done,
2 minutes.
Attorney, I go, I need to ask you. I asked the judge, I go, can I ask you guys one question? And he goes, what's that? And I go, you guys say that, well, I'm under the influence of those 3 drugs. I'm not coherent enough to raise my children. I go, but yet under the same 3 drugs, you let me sign my rights away. I go, isn't that contradicting each other?
Right. Well,
and they told me just,
in a CPS,
there's nothing I can do.
Right. In a CPS courtroom, it's just a bad strategy to show up under the influence, number one. And number two, it's even worse to tell the judge, hey, I'm under the influence, because he or she is probably going to think, well, you shouldn't have the kids. And if I can keep the kids with one of the parents, namely the father, that's what I'm going to do.
And I even told the judge, too. I told him, I was like, right now, I can't even take care of myself, let alone them. I'm okay with them being with their dads. But I didn't want to get my rights up.
Right. So definitely try to speak to an attorney in your area about setting aside those the relinquishment based upon the no attorney and being under the influence and you informing the court. I'm not saying that you're going to have great success in it, but at least if you want to try to get your rights back, that's something that you should think about doing. Okay? Hey, Susan, I want to thank you for calling and thank you for listening. And if in a few weeks you've talked to an attorney and you might be going back to court, to reverse that relinquishment, give us a call. Keep us updated. All right, Susan? All right. It's time for our first break. This is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win, and we'll be right back after these messages.